So this is it. The combat video I'm told every D&D YouTube channel has to make. There's already so many great videos on making combat easy, fun, engaging, rewarding, etc. I assume there's really not much else to say on the matter, and you may agree with that. Then I noticed something. Most of these videos involve changing the combat itself, changing the type of combat, changing the objective. But what about all the combat encounters out there that on paper should be pretty vanilla? Are they doomed? Are they dead on arrival, destined to become the infamous slog? In this video, I'm going to give you a powerful tool and a bunch of examples of it that I attach to any combat, no matter the goal, no matter the obstacle, that make it memorable and most importantly, fun to play. My name is Sam, I'm Dungeon Master and former teacher. I spent the last decade teaching over 100 new players how to tell their stories using my favorite game in the world, Dungeons & Dragons. This is Tabletop University. Changing the encounter type or the objective are great ways to spice up a would-be slog. Dottie from Mystic Arts has great tips for how to add variety into both of these, and you should go watch his videos. They're great, and they'll be linked down below. Sometimes though, the type and the objective has already been decided for you by all the other people who are playing the game. Player choices and objectives will often decide what kind of encounter you're in for before you've ever had a chance to put your thumb on the scale. But fret not. Just because the encounter is fighting monsters in your monster fighting game doesn't mean it has to feel the same every time. These standard encounters exist in modules and adventures for a reason, and sometimes they're very fun. Other times they're not. But why? What makes them fun one time and boring the next? The scientific answer, novelty and autonomy. Novelty is something new or unusual. You probably remember the first combat you experienced either as a player or as a DM. Autonomy is being independent, free, and self-directing. In the gaming world, we call this player agency. It basically means just making their own choices. The other encounters that most of us do remember are the times that we made that bold choice. This is why these simple encounters from every D&D starter set are completely appropriate and fun for newer players. It will find the game itself novel enough, so they don't need more choices than where should I move, who should I hit my sword, and what is a spell slot? That is plenty of newness for inexperienced players. There's a great study on novelty called The Emerging Neuroscience of Intrinsic Motivation. I know, it's a mouthful, but it reaches this conclusion. Too much novelty relative to a person's skill and knowledge produces anxiety. Too little novelty produces boredom, which is where the slog comes in. When the encounter type and the objective is decided by players and their choices, they'll likely default to a deathmatch. I mean, look at the game you're playing. Most of the player's handbook is combat mechanics. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Don't get me wrong, there are times when that really is all you need. A little combat nail to whet the appetite of a party full of hammers. But sometimes, your players have made their choice, and you're locked in and face to face with a nail that will likely turn into a slog. But what if that nail is on the ceiling? What if you're on a treadmill? What if the nail is so small it's imperceptible to the human eye and the only way to hammer it is to fire an anti-shrink ray at it, but you're being swarmed by bees and they all have tiny hammers? It's the same nail, but the feeling is completely different. The nail, the objective, is what your players are trying to accomplish, and it's vital to the encounter, but it's only one axis on which the encounter lives. That one axis limits our range of results. It's even. We're succeeding, we're failing, we succeed, or we fail. I'm simplifying a lot here for time purposes, but we'll come back to this. When we go to the DMG for advice on how to make a standard combat more interesting, it's fine, but it's really limited. Almost every tip revolves around repositioning so that you can hit the bad guys better. But what if you gave your characters a choice? Hit the bad guys or do something completely different. A completely new axis on which the pendulum of combat can swing. Our result possibilities go from this to this, from axis to axes. By adding just one other thing in the encounter that players and enemies can affect, that doesn't just add to the amount of possibilities, it multiplies them. When we add another axis with, we'll say 5 possible states, which as I mentioned earlier is a very low estimate, we bring our possibilities within our encounter from 5 to 25. But why stop there? Add one more encounter axis and you've created 125 directions in which the encounter can go, just by adding 2 things. This is that unpredictability and novelty that makes a combat memorable, and players have the autonomy to choose how and when they interact with each individual axis, resulting in fun. 2 encounter axes is great, but I think 3 is just perfect. If you want to use 4, go nuts. Just know it can get a little difficult to keep track of those 625 possible encounter states. There's a reason that Call of Duty, League of Legends, and countless other games that have stuck around for a while, they stick with the rule of 3. When one side takes control of A, they become more vulnerable at B and C, which means that the other side now has to make a decision. I'm gonna give you 4 different categories of encounter axes to choose from and a load of examples for each. One tip, when you introduce another encounter axis, be clear about what they are so that your players get to make informed decisions. The entire point of all of this is just to give your players meaningful choices in combat. That's the game. So let's open up our menu, sit down, relax, and order something. As in most restaurants, we're gonna start with the protein of our combat meal, the objective or win condition, which will likely end the encounter. You can have more than one, but you have to have at least one, otherwise, what's the point? Number 1 on our menu is enemies, kill them. It's popular because it works. Always order alongside a retreat number, or how many are left before they start running, and if it's their territory, it could be 0. Number 2 is a slightly different take on our number 1, kill the target. Typically looks like a boss fight or an assassination. Our least aggressive protein on the menu is an inverted take on this, protect the target. Save the hostages is the premise of every Mario game, and it's an absolute classic. It's really just a protect the target with a few extra steps. Next, we have Stop the Flood. Lots of enemies pouring through multiple entrances which can be locked. That's the key here. Bar the doors, take down rope bridges. It forces the party to spread out and use real strategy. If the flood isn't stopped, it can change our main course right into an escape. The goal becomes create enough distance from a pursuer or a group of pursuers, or leaving a dangerous area like a cave-in. Our next dish pairs quite nicely with cult activity. Stop the Ritual. Dealing with a group, and it's sort of a puzzle within a fight. Imported from Middle-earth, we have Get the MacGuffin. This dish is centered around an object of interest that can move, and the rest of the fight isn't really what's important here. Both sides should know this and act accordingly. Add a second order of a MacGuffin, and you get a classic Sophie's Choice. A more stable variety is the Pull the Lever, a MacGuffin that doesn't move, also known as Destroy the Nexus or the Power Switch. I'm fully aware that there are many other proteins out there that deserve to be added to this list. Feel free to drop them in the comments and let me know which ones I missed. Once you select your objective, we add our next axis. The first type is optimizers, things that don't end the encounter but clearly help whoever has them. A fantastic addition to any encounter is the classic free your allies or call for reinforcements. You can use an alarm, even a magic horn, or a jail cell. Our next dish is a Mustafarian special right out of the Dungeon Master's Guide. The High Ground. I highly recommend giving advantage and disadvantage to attacks based on the location and the vantage points across a battlefield. Up here we have our goblins, and anyone attacking from down below because of the elevation change has disadvantage as they attack up. The goblins have advantage as they attack down. It's a simple way to make the battlefield way more dynamic, and vantage points like this become a tactical goldmine. This could be structures naturally occurring or a flight of stairs. Next on our list is the Stash, and that's just access to a resource. Could be ammo, weapons, spell scrolls, healing potions, whatever you want really. I like to use just like a little tray full of bits and bobs, could be thumbtacks or screws or whatever it is, just to signify where that's at in the battlefield so that they remember that they have access to it. Up next we have the Chevy Chase. Set up the encounter in 2 separate areas with a divider and a bunch of small entrances, each of which can be opened and closed by either side. A lot of the same elements from Stop the Flood, but make sure there's at least one main entrance that can't be blocked or else it'll just turn into one. One popular twist on the Chevy Chase is to order it mixed with a High Ground, and you get reverse whack-a-mole. One group is one floor above the other, and there are tiny little holes and trap doors everywhere where they can poke out and shoot people or drop rocks on them. You can put on the floor for a regular whack-a-mole, but that's not as fun. A popular combo platter is levers and traps. Jets of flame from the walls of whatever building you're in, suspended cauldrons that are dropping acid on people. You can drop a bridge, there can be hidden pits, oil slick, color spray. Put a little guy on this and make it obvious that he's the one controlling them. If you take the levers, you can now use their own weapons against them. One thing that gets ordered a lot this time of year is the big gun, and that's just adding an ultra powerful weapon like this ballista here to any battlefield. It can really help your party or the enemies punch above their weight. A ballista, cannons, lightning cannon, whatever you want really. There's a bunch of siege equipment in the Dungeon Master's Guide to steal anything from that. I would make it part of the environment, or you could permanently ruin your game when they decide to inevitably take it with them. As an optional side, if you really want to make it interesting, include a power source or a resource counter, or at least a limited range of motion. This last one gets ordered a lot with a high ground dish, and that's a boon. Not a resource, but an enhancement. Dip your weapon into a font of magic and immediately gain advantage on all attacks with it, or it becomes a +1 magic weapon for the next round, not forever. That would be crazy. Haste zones, bless zone, or a temporary HP zone. There's no reason you can't add these to any area where magic is prevalent. With positive combat axes out of the way, let's look further down our menu at our sides. Hazards can be paired quite well with an optimizer. These are all about positioning and risk calculation. Are you willing to take the high ground if it means there's an eventual fall incoming? Are you willing to stand at the big gun if it means being dangerously close to a vat of acid? There's some pretty decent entries for this in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Most serve to restrain characters or just slow them down, which can lead to a slog. We want things that are going to add elements to the fight, not take them away. The chef is really proud of this next one. It's called the no-go zone, and that is obvious life-ending danger. Make sure you show these and also use them sparingly. A battlefield with a crack in it, the melee fighter's worst nightmare. Everything but the skyship, the melee fighter's best friend. Or perhaps you're more interested in the one-sided variant, the Mufasa special. A signature dish is our vat of acid. You're probably thinking that a vat of acid is just a vat of acid, but you couldn't be more wrong. They come in many varieties and flavors: acid, lava, electric eels. Their defining feature: you will be hurt immediately, but you may be able to get out before you die. If you're into vat of acid, you're gonna love our other varieties. Pit of Creatures is a vat of acid you can fight. I Can Take It is a vat of acid that can be withstood. Magical Machinery is a vat of acid that's potentially has a power button somewhere. Frogger is just a vat of acid you can dodge and possibly be fine. This is your fight in traffic, stampede, rushing river, whichever one you want. One hazard that's really popular in large cities is you're on a roof. Our next item is a little cold, but very approachable. Thin ice. The DMG version is really math heavy here, so I simplify things by just using the size categories like tiny, small, medium, large. For thin ice, a tiny or small creature is totally fine to walk around as much as they want. They might still fall down. That's a totally different thing. A medium creature has to make an acrobatics check to avoid cracking the ice, and then a large creature has to make an acrobatics check with disadvantage. If you're medium, you also might give yourself disadvantage if you jump or hit the ice with a hammer. A really fun part about this is that the ice has different stages: stable, cracked, or broken. And you can even make that spread to where once one thing breaks, then all the squares around that are now cracked. Once the ice is cracked, I usually move the scale down one. This doesn't just occur in Arctic environments either. You make that roof earlier glass and you get thin ice in a city. Quicksand is just thin ice that I don't like. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere. Not like here. Our final category on the menu is dessert, the chaos axis. These usually change the dynamic of the meal completely, but isn't necessarily good for you and is equally tempting. Kind of like actual dessert. A classic dish that people love to play with: fire. Just have one nearby, along with a bunch of flammable materials. It comes in different forms, but fire is universally understood and kind of irresistible. Lights out. Regular darkness, magic darkness, fog clouds. There's a lot of different versions of this, but basically just obscure people's vision. It pairs really well with a pullable lever. Something the chef is trying but is really tough to get right: the random stash. Remember that stash of health potions from earlier? Well, what if all the... I knocked my water off. What if all the labels were torn off and could either be healing or damage dealing area of effect spells? Could be fun. Bring it down. This is a riskier option that usually looks like supports holding up your mining shaft or the crumbling ruins you're exploring. Maybe it's the engines powering your airship. Unlabeled levers. You kill the goblin who's been activating all those traps earlier, only to find that none of his levers have any labels on them at all. What now? Free them. Kind of like free your allies, but without the ally part. Caged creatures, automatons, vampires, elementals. But basically when you let them out, they'll attack anyone and everyone in a completely random order. Usually there's a chaotic player that cannot resist this. There's Power Up, which just restores the dormant defenses of the area. This can be undead or automata activated. This is something clearly powerful, but vague. Add a do not touch sign and you're in business. This comes in many tastes and varieties. It can be an orb or a crystal of some kind, which might lead to a wild magic surge or a dead magic zone. Pick an area of effect spell and have it start emitting that effect every 2 rounds. Activate it can be made into a combo. The longer it's on, roll for a malfunction of some kind, which can then turn your encounter into a classic bring it down. No matter the objective or the type of combat you're running, choosing 2 extra items from this menu to complement your protein will give players more choices, make encounters more memorable, and most importantly, fun. The novelty is back, baby! Full disclosure, this video is selfishly as much for myself and my players as it is for you. I compiled it after taking inventory of my most memorable encounters and the worst ones. We've all had them. I'm trying to avoid slogs as much as the next DM, and this has been helping me a lot. In no way is this menu exhaustive. Almost every time I watch a show, movie, or actual play, I see something else that should honestly be added, so let me know. I'd love to see some in the comments that never even crossed my mind. I'll comment my list down below, so feel free to add yours to it in the replies. Also, in the middle of combat, if a player introduces an axis you didn't even think of, try to let it work within reason. Reward their creative thinking. If you want an encounter to be quick, maybe just use 2 axes instead of 3. It's enough to give the players choice, but not enough to make it go on too long if you're trying to get to like a big battle later. Also, some villains are complex enough to basically count as their own axis. For those of you who watch the video all the way through, I'm going to be leaving a downloadable link to the menu in the video description. I'm also going to include tables of everything on the screen starting now. So, that's it. I don't really believe this idea is original to me. I think I heard Brendan Lee Mulligan say something about adding an extra axis to combat in some interview, but I cannot find that clip anywhere. So maybe it was someone else. Maybe I came up with it. I don't know. But until next time, subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell, like, and share, which I've learned has massive implications on a video success. And of course, may you have memorable encounters and use them to tell memorable stories. And at the end of the day, story is all that matters. This has been Tabletop University. I have been Sam. Thank you for watching. All right, we're done. That has to be it. We have to be done. Good, ruining everything.